Runs with Courage, Chapter 1, Beginning, Great Sioux Reservation, Dakota Territory, 1880. The prairie had been very still the day the whites came. The animals stayed tucked in their burrows most of the day. The grasses had not danced in the wind. Clouds had not appeared in the blue sky. It was as if the prairie itself knew what was to come. "Sister," Bear said, pointing, "what is that?" I looked up from the basket I was mending to see a wagon approach in the cloud of dust. I knew immediately it was the whites. Before Cousin had died from the meat sickness, she and I often talked about them. "What do you think the whites look like?" she had asked. But once, as we walked together on the prairie, only a moon before her death. "They must be very tall, very powerful," I answered. It was the whites' leader, the great white father, who had forced us to the Great Sioux Reservation. Only someone very powerful could do that. "They must look like warriors," Cousin agreed. "Yes," I said, "and if we see them, we will be brave like warriors." Cousin had nodded. Even though we were girls, we knew we could be as brave as our boy cousins, and like the boys, we too wanted to receive our adult names. I was in my 10th season, and I had been called to my childhood name of Four Winds since I could remember. Uncle had given me this name when we still lived in the forest of Hisapa, before our move to the reservation. I had received this name because I could hear the words of our ancestors speaking in the winds that moved through the trees. Cousin's name had been Laughing Bear because she always had long, graceful legs like a deer, and she was always joyful and laughing. Grandfather had given her this name. I had not talked about the whites with anyone since Cousin had died, but now they were in front of me. A white man and woman sat in front of a large cart pulled by a horse. Their skin was very pale and their clothes were strange, but they were not as tall as I had thought they would be. They looked no more powerful than any of our own warriors. The woman wore a long black dress that fit tightly at her waist. She had a fabric covering around her head that was tied with a ribbon beneath her chin. The man wore long pants connected to the straps on his shirt. The coverings on his feet looked hard and came to a point. They didn't look anything like moccasins. How could he walk in such things? I couldn't see the color of the woman's hair, but the man's hair was the same golden shade as the prairie grasses. It gleamed in the light of the sun. "Sister," Bear whispered from the side, "the man's hair. Do you see?" My brother was only 5 seasons and curious about everything. "It is so short." Rather than flow down his back, the man's hair stopped at his shoulders as if it had been cut. No one ever cut their hair unless they were in mourning. "I don't know," I whispered. "Perhaps the hair of white men does not grow." "Sister," he asked, "why are they here?" I shook my head, unable to answer, and unable to stop staring as the 2 whites and the reservation official who had come with them walked into the council's lodge. I longed for Cousin to be by my side again. She would have ideas about this mysterious appearance in our Teospa. We would talk and giggle and until the worry of this unexpected visit would blow away in the breeze. More than anything, I wished to hear the sound of her laugh again. I took Bear by the hand and led him to the other side of our teepee, where we couldn't see what was happening. I began to play a bone game with him, trying to distract both of us from the visit. But soon one of the ants came for Bear, and I went to the front of our teepee to watch the council lodge. Whenever someone came in or out, I looked down as if I were stitching a quilled pouch. The ants and I pretend to work, but no one was really working. We were all paying close attention to the lodge. The whites stayed as the sun crawled halfway down the sky. Elders came into the lodge, left, and came back with our other members of the Teospa. My heart quickened when I saw Uncle emerge from the council lodge and return with Father next to him. When the ants gathered to prepare the evening meal, I listened to their chatter. I was not old enough to join in their talk, but I could listen. "Has the Great White Father passed another law?" one of the ants asked. "Do you think that's why they have come?" said another. "Will we have to move again? Are they taking away this land too? Did you see his hair? How he cut his hair? Their clothes are too tight and too long, and how do they walk with those hard coverings on their feet?" I listened to their questions, hoping that when I joined my family for our meal, Father or Uncle would explain why the whites had come, but that night the adults were silent. Normally we would talk as we sat eating together on the floor of the teepee. Father would tell of the day's hunt, and sometimes Uncle would share a story from long ago. "There were whites here today," I said, unable to keep quiet any longer. Uncle and Father acted as if they hadn't heard, but Mother put down her buffalo horn spoon and frowned at me. I knew that as a child it was not my place to be the first to bring up something this important. Mother and the aunts were constantly reminding me of how I should be like the other girls, quiet and patient, but quiet was not in my spirit, and my anger was quick to burn. You are like lightning, Four Winds, Mother would sometimes scold, and lightning causes fires. Who are the Whites? Bear asked, looking from me to the uncle. Uncle put down his spoon and looked at Bear thoughtfully for several seconds. This was his way. Mother often told me I needed to be more like this, to think carefully before speaking. They are men as we are men, Uncle said. They are two-legged who walk upright like us, but instead they are different. Uncle's voice tightened. They do not keep their promises. They are not honorable. They were here for a long time, I pressed, still wanting to know the reason for their visit. Are we going to lose this land too? I asked. Impatient nod at me. Bear looked frightened, and Mother threw an angry glance at me. I shouldn't be scaring Brother with such talk. No one said anything. Will no one talk to me? I blurted. Daughter, Father said quietly, we will talk when it is time to talk. I looked down, knowing once again I had acted in a way I should not. Lightning, I reminded myself. I had to tame my impatience so it wouldn't burn. For the next moon, I tried to be near my elder relatives as they did their quill work or tanned hides. I wanted to hear their talk, hoping that some of it would be about the Whites and their visit. I was like a rabbit, quiet but aware of everything happening around me. I thought I could tell when their discussion turned to the topic of the Whites. Their voices would fade to a whisper, and they would turn their eyes downward. They always did this when talking of something serious. I would make my way closer to them, hoping to hear their discussion, but every time I drew near, their whispers would stop and they would turn away. When the moon of cherries blackening appeared, I was happy for something to think about besides the Whites. This was the time when the choke cherries ripened and were ready for gathering. It had been my favorite moon when we had lived in the Sapa. I had loved walking in the forest, finding the bushes of dark tangy berries, picking them by the handfuls. I enjoyed helping Mother mash them so they could be mixed into wasna to eat during the cold months. We had not collected any for 2 seasons because we were unable to find the berries on this reservation prairie. I'd begun to wonder if I would ever taste them again. Little brother, I said, on the second day of this moon, let's look for chokeberries. This is when they are ready to be picked. Do you remember how they make your lips pucker and stain your fingers? A little, he said. He had only been 3 seasons when we moved to the reservation from the forest. I felt a pang of sadness to know that Bear did not remember such much of Hisapa. I could still remember the sound of the whispering trees and the feel of the rushing waters. If I closed my eyes, I could even remember the way it smelled of pine. Mother watched us gather parfleck containers, and I could see in her face that she was skeptical. We are going to find choke cherries, I said with determination. We haven't looked everywhere. There might be some bushes growing closer to the rock cliffs. I took Bear by the hand and picked up the container with the other. Heat radiated from the ground as we walked through the tall grasses. On the prairie during this moon, the sun acted like a cooking fire, making everything hot and uncomfortable. But even with the heat, the grasses never seemed to wilt. They grew tall and wild as if they loved the warmth. In some places, they grew taller than Bear. Stay close, little brother. It is easy to get lost in the grasses, I warned. I won't get lost, sister, he said. Uncle gave me the name of Four Winds when I lost once during a choke cherry harvest in Hisapa, I said. Were the grasses tall there? Bear asked. No, Hisapa has forest with big trees and cliffs and valleys. It is a sacred place, and it is easy to get lost if you don't pay attention. I was gathering choke cherries with grandmother and mother and wandered away from them. When Mother found me, I was standing in a clearing of trees above a small ravine. Later, I told Mother I could hear the voices of our ancestors whispering through the wind in the trees. I told her exactly what they had said, even though I was only 3 seasons. Do the tree voices sound like the grass wind? Bear asked. No, I said. I can't hear the voices in the wind here, but sometimes if I close my eyes, I can still remember the sound of the trees in Hisapa and the words our ancestors spoke in the 4 winds. Are those choke cherries, sister? Bear asked, interrupting my story, pointing at a small bush with red berries. No, those are poison. Look closely, I said, squishing one of the berries between my finger. The color is too red. Choke cherries are much blacker. The birds will eat these, but we will get sick if we do. He frowned with disappointment and then began running up the bluff we had come to. I will find them, sister. I will find those choke cherries, he said. We returned to our teepee late that afternoon to report that we had found none. Bear had seen a small lizard, and he could hardly contain his excitement. It has a long tail and walks very close to the earth. It is like a snake, but not like a snake, he babbled as we ate watery, thin stew for our evening meal. None of the adults said anything. It was another meal without speaking. I knew something was wrong. We live in the white men's world, Uncle said, after Bear finally stopped talking about the lizard. This is our reality. I felt my stomach knot, remembering the visit from the whites the moon before. We must know their ways, he continued. We must learn about them so we can live in this world. Do you understand, niece? I nodded. Although I didn't understand what he was saying, I glanced over to Mother, and she was looking down at her hands. For this reason, you will leave to live with them and attend their school, Four Winds, Uncle finished. I was so stunned I couldn't think for several seconds. What? I cried, standing. What do you mean? Panic filled me as I suddenly understood why the whites had come. They had come to take me away. No, I said, looking around at my family. No. But my future had been decided. There was nothing to say. I was outside running across a prairie before anyone could stop me, as if I could run away from this future. I ran until I felt like my lungs would explode. Then I collapsed in the tall grasses, trying to catch my breath. The sun had disappeared, and the sky had grown dark. Crickets had begun their night song, and I sat on the ground a long time, letting the sound of their lullaby calm me. When I returned to our teepee, everyone was still sitting, although the stew had been removed. Bear was playing with the stones on top of the sleeping space. This is not something you can run from, Uncle said quietly. I looked down, ashamed that I had let my anger overtake me, ashamed that I had said no to an elder. It is a white school for girls only, he continued. Here you will help us learn the ways of the white world, Father spoke. You will learn their language, their customs, and you will teach us. You will help us. Our people need your help. This is what has been decided, Uncle finished, and the discussion ended. That night, Mother came to me as I lay sleeping on the skins. Daughter, you are like lightning. You must control your anger before it gets away from you. Yes, Mother, I said, feeling tears come to my eyes. Be brave, she said, stroking my cheek softly. Tears were falling now. Mother stayed by my side. I will have courage, I said. I fell asleep thinking about Cousin. We had always wanted to prove our bravery, prove that we could be as brave as any warrior. We are brave, Cousin had said more than once. Yes, we just need a chance to prove it, I agreed. Now was my chance, the chance I had longed for. I should have felt excited for this moment, but all I felt was fear.